Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. I'm Matt Hartsky. In today's episode, we're cutting through the noise. You've probably heard them, those persistent elk hunting myths that get tossed around like gospel. From group chats and Facebook groups to YouTube comments, campfire talk, some of these ideas have been repeated so many times, hunters just accept them without question. But here's the thing. A lot of that talk doesn't hold up in the actual elk woods. I've been hunting elk on public land for 33 seasons. I've chased bulls in early September heat and during snow-blown rifle seasons. I've packed out solo, hunted with partners, called in screaming bulls, and stalked silent shadows. I've made mistakes, and I've learned from every one of them. And today, I'm going to break down three of the most common myths I hear about elk hunting. Myths that might be holding you back more than you realize. We'll talk about why bugling is not a requirement to kill bulls, why moon phase isn't nearly as important as people make it out to be, and why public land elk do respond to calls, just not how you might expect. Let's get into it. Myth number one. You have to bugle to kill bulls. This is probably the biggest myth I hear and the one that keeps a lot of new elk hunters stuck. Let me say this right out of the gate. Bugles work. They're an incredible tool in the right context. They can fire up a bull, locate a herd, and create that electric moment every elk hunter dreams of. But here's the reality. You don't have to bugle to kill elk. Some of the most consistent public land elk killers I know, guys who notch tags every year after year, rarely bugle at all. Instead, they rely on stealth, behavior observation, cow calls, terrain knowledge, and a lot of patience. Elk are vocal animals, but they're also highly adaptive. In pressured units, especially over-the-counter archery units in states like Colorado, Idaho, Montana, bulls hear a lot of bad bugling. Even here in Wyoming, a lot of bad bugling going on, too much easy access. Bulls hear bugling from the road all the time. That's not just a guess, that's field experience talking. When you bugle like everyone else, you sound like, well, everyone else. And if that sound is always followed by heavy footfalls, the wrong wind, and a hunter blowing through the timber, bulls learn fast. They start associating that noise with danger, not dominance. I've had bulls bugle once and go completely silent as they slipped away because they heard 5 other hunters blow locator calls earlier that week. I've also shadowed bulls and heard silently for miles and gotten in within 40 yards of a raking bull just by staying downwind and moving like elk. Sometimes a cow call is just enough. Sometimes raking a branch gets a bull curious, fired up. Sometimes you just move with intent, use cover, and let the elk lead the way. Here are a few examples. Cow calls have brought in bulls when bugles get zero response. I've stalked feeding bulls by watching thermals, using terrain, and never making a sound because they were call shy, but patternable. On one hunt, I watched a bull run from a bugle, literally run the other direction. That bull was educated. But when I returned the next day, got into that area, found him, used a light rake followed by a couple of light cow chirps, that same bull came in cautiously. The bottom line, you need to know when not to call just as much as you know when to call. Bugling is powerful when timed right. Early rut aggression, isolated bulls, or when you have perfect wind and terrain, but it's not always a silver bullet. The truth, you don't need to bugle to kill bulls. You need to know when to bugle and, more importantly, when to shut up and move with purpose. Myth number 2, moon phases dictate elk behavior. Let's talk about moon phase and elk activity. This one comes up all the time, especially from guys planning their first out-of-state elk hunt. They'll ask, is that a good moon? Or say, I was going to hunt this week, but it's a full moon. And I get it. The idea makes sense at face value. Brighter nights mean more elk movement under the moon, which could mean less daylight activity and action, right? But after more than 33 years in the elk woods, hunting during every possible moon phase you can imagine, here's my honest take. Moon phase is one of the most overrated factors in elk hunting. Let me break this down with clarity. What science and my experience says, can a full moon influence elk activity? Technically, yes. Studies and personal observations show that elk may feed more at night during full moons, especially in warm weather, but that doesn't mean they go nocturnal. It just means their schedule shifts slightly. They still have to bed. They still get up to drink. They still move, especially when hunting pressure, thermals, and the weather demand it. And here's the real kicker. I've hunted some of my best elk action during full moons. Why? Because I was where the elk wanted to be at first light. I was in their path from night feeding to morning bedding. That transition window is golden, full moon or not. I have a full video I'll link to up here that describes in detail my transition hunting technique. What actually affects elk movement more than the moon? If you're serious about finding elk, focus on these factors first because they consistently matter more than the moon. Thermals and wind. Elk live and die by their nose. Wind direction and shifting thermals play a massive role in their movement, bedding, and escape routes. If the wind is wrong, it doesn't matter what phase the moon is, you're busted. Hunting pressure. Elk respond to people more than interstellar balls of light. A high-pressure unit full of bugling hunters will push elk into quieter zones, deeper timber, or oddball drainages. That's where adaptability beats moon theory every time. The rutting phase. Pre-rut, peak rut, and post-rut behaviors drive elk movement far more than moonlight. In the heat of the rut, a mature bull isn't thinking about the moon, he's thinking about cows and competition. The weather. Sudden cold snaps, rain, or barometric drops get elk moving more consistently than any moon cycle I've ever seen. I can remember having a moon conversation with a buddy a few years ago. He insisted it threw off his game and never had any luck with a full or near full moon. But I focused on nighttime feeding patterns, thermals, terrain that funneled elk toward north-facing bedding timber. I got into position early, before first light, letting the moonlight, bugling, all that talking, guide me in close, and I just listened. I was able to cut off the herd, waited, and shot my bull at 7:15 in the morning. The moon didn't stop him from heading from bedding or from feeding to his bed. If you're stuck with a full moon during your hunt, here are real-world strategies I use. Get in position early. Elk that feed or fed under moonlight will head toward bedding sooner. Be on those transition routes before first light. Focus on shady north-facing slopes. Elk feel more secure there during hot moonlit nights, and are more likely to bed there earlier. Hunt aggressively earlier. If elk are feeding all night, your first 60 to 90 minutes of daylight can be your only window to intercept them. The truth, moon phase is a tiny variable in a massive equation. It's not irrelevant, but it should never be your deciding factor. Good e-scouting, adaptability, pressure awareness, and hunting with wind and terrain in mind, keeping those things at the forefront of your elk hunting will beat moon obsession every time. The only guy who gets truly burned by moon phase, the ones who use it as an excuse not to hunt. Myth number 3, public land elk don't respond to calls. Look, I get where this one comes from. A guy hikes 5 miles into a pressured unit, rips a locator bugle, and nothing answers. Then he cow calls every 30 seconds for the next hour, and still nothing. The conclusion? Elk are call shy. Calling doesn't work here anymore. But here's the truth. It's not that public land elk don't respond. It's that they don't respond to bad calling, or bad setups, or bad timing, or guys who sound like they're reading a Primos DVD script from 2005. Let me unpack this in detail. The real problem isn't calling, it's context. Here's the mistake I see a lot of guys make. They think calling equals success without understanding the situation they're calling into. Public land bulls, especially mature ones, are survivors. They've heard every off-brand diaphragm call in the Walmart bargain bin. They've seen hunters sprinting toward every bugle that echoes through the canyon. That doesn't make them call shy. It makes them call educated. Let's break down why calling doesn't seem to work for many hunters. Poor setup. Maybe it's too open. Elk want to see the source of a sound. If they can't see the elk making the noise, they hang up out of range. Maybe it's the wrong wind. Even a single swirl and you're busted. Maybe there aren't many shooting lanes. You might call one in and never even see them. Maybe there's no hunter movement after calling. Elk don't always respond vocally, but they might come in silent. If you're planted and not scanning or repositioning as you call, you'll miss them. Oftentimes, it's calling too much. Constant cow calling can scream hunter more than herd. Bugling every 2 minutes from the same spot is a dead giveaway. Maybe there's lack of realism in the calling. Elk don't all sound perfect, but they sound authentic, especially in cadence, urgency, and most importantly, emotion. If your sequence sounds like a looped MP3, they're going to figure it out. Maybe it's the wrong call type for the scenario. Bugling to a bull with cows during peak rut, you'd better sound dominant and close that gap fast. Cow calling to a bachelor group in late rut, your background noise, unless you create curiosity or movement. A couple years ago, I had a bull who was bugling very intermittently at daylight. I hadn't had much luck bugling the prior 8 days, so I decided to just give him a mild end of bugle grunt, kind of like, "Meow." He replied with an equally mild trailing off bugle. I made one soft cow call. No response, nothing. 10 minutes later, I made a few quiet raking sounds, nothing too aggressive, and then I moved 40 yards closer silently. Still had never made another vocal response. About 5 minutes after that, I caught movement and a 6x5 bull was walking in silent. Ears up, nose forward, never made a sound. He'd heard my subtle calls and raking, didn't feel threatened, came in to investigate, shot him at 30 yards. Here's how to increase your odds when calling public land elk. Master the setup first. Always check wind and thermals first. Create a kill zone. Tight cover for you, open approach lanes for them. Never call from a spot you can't shoot from. Use the right sequence for the right situation. Solo cow, soft, lonely mews with movement. Herd bull, spike squeals, challenge bugles, herd talk. Suspicious elk, subtle raking or low mews and maybe trailing bugles, real very light aggression on the bull side. Think like elk, not like a human. Elk move while calling. Try not to be a statue. Herds make layered sounds. Mimic multiple animals, not just one. Give it time. If a bull is responding, don't rush. Let that tension build. Bulls often hang up just out of sight. Be ready for silent, slow approaches. Practice realism, not perfection. Imperfect sounds are fine. Elk cough, they bark, and they mess up their bugles all the time. But make sure your cadence, tone, and urgency fit the situation. The truth, public land elk absolutely respond to calls, but your strategy, realism, and setup determine whether that response puts them in range or sends them the other direction. Look, there's no shortage of opinions on elk in the elk woods. You'll hear guys say you have to bugle. You can't hunt on a full moon. Public land bulls are uncallable. And if you listen to all that noise without filtering it through actual field time, you'll end up missing opportunities instead of chasing elk and learning more. Here's what I've learned over 33 seasons. The best elk hunters aren't the loudest. They're the most adaptable. They don't marry any one tactic. They don't panic when the rut's slow. They don't skip hunts because of moon chart or because of a Reddit thread. They hunt what's real: the terrain, the thermals, the wind, the sign, and the elk behavior in front of them. And when they mess up, they learn. This episode was not about proving anyone wrong or arguing. It's about getting rid of the limiting beliefs that hold some elk hunters back. We could have picked a wide variety of topics. So next time you're out there, whether you're calling or you're creeping or you're bugling or you're just shadowing the herd, do it with intent. Show up prepared. Trust your gut. Adapt when needed and hunt with backbone. That's the difference between guys who talk about elk hunting and guys who hang antlers on their wall every year. If this episode helped clear the air for you, here's what you can do. Subscribe to the podcast or YouTube channel, share it with a hunting buddy who's stuck in myth mode, and check out backboneunlimited.com. I would love to have you join me on Team Backbone.